Hello, everyone. We're here back once again with the total NASL Roundtable with the total NASL crew. How are you guys tonight?
Doing great.
Doing good.
Okay, so let's get to the review of FC Edmonton. The Atlanta Silverbacks against the Scorpions. And start with you, Paul. Your thoughts on the 3-3 draw?
Yeah, so this is when the 3-3 draw feels like a loss. We were ahead 3-1 with about 30 minutes to go and had successfully parked the bus the last couple of games and couldn't do it, couldn't hold on. There were a couple of set pieces that Gary Smith mentioned in his post-game press conference that we need to work on our set piece defense. Otherwise, we were very pleased with it. I thought the attack was going really well, and that last 30 minutes we just couldn't defend the set piece to save our lives. They get two pretty decent ones and put both of them in the back of the net because we just weren't ready for the setup there. So not going to complain too much. We just won 3, so we got 4 unbeaten now. We're still sitting second in the fall table, still sitting 6th in the combined tables. So we're not going to win them all. We understand that. San Antonio's got a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. Defending league champs and thinking we shouldn't be down here. So it also had one of those just upset written all over it because we'd won 3 in a row and they'd lost 3 or 4 in a row on the road, and so it just when you see those two things come together, you're like, yeah, here comes a big game. But it was very entertaining. They had a decent crowd, but I thought they were very entertaining game despite the loss. I was kind of bummed about it, but I thought generally the crowd was pretty happy with it, pretty entertained. So all in all, pretty good night.
Do you have hope that the Silverbacks can try to pass the Fury in the top of the fall season?
I don't know. Man, I don't know. They are pulling away, so what it seems like, from everybody. I'm not real optimistic about winning the fall. I am a lot more optimistic about getting into that 4th spot in the combined table. I think with a little help from a couple of other matches this weekend and a win from us, we could be in that 4th spot after this Saturday's matches. So I think that's a more realistic goal than making up the gap to the Fury.
This past weekend, the Strikers, they drew 3-3 to the New York Cosmos, which the Cosmos almost lost that match, which was pretty sad. But the Cardiac Cosmos came back and tied it up 3-3. So let's move on to Indy 11 facing Ottawa Fury. And Theo, the Fury won once again 4-1 to Michael's 11.
Yeah, it was an important win because it was a rare road win in 2015 for Mark Dos Santos' men, their second win on the road, a big one, and it's there's a pattern developing when we're playing Indy that we score 4 goals. 3 of the 4, three matches out of the 2 seasons, we've put 4 past them, and it was nice to see the goals by committee continue with the Fury. 4 players who scored. Three players scored. Andrew Wiedemann scored 2, but all 3 players, it was their first goals of 2015. So again, it's not one guy pulling away with the goals lead for the Fury. Everybody's contributing, and hey, we'll go with it. It's paying dividends for us now.
The new German striker that the Fury signed, did he make the squad for that match?
He didn't make the squad, and I haven't heard anything about whether he might make the squad on the weekend. It's going to be a tough team to get into because they're producing right now. Unless he's a clear-cut above in training, maybe they'll ease him in with a few minutes at the end of a game somewhere to see what's up with him. But I wouldn't look for him to get some significant playing time soon.
Michael, how do you feel being on the bottom end of a 4-1 loss?
Overall, it's disappointing to lose 4-1. They scored. Was it Ubi Peripovic scored 9 minutes into the game? Indy 11 fought hard. They really did, and that's one thing you've seen under interim coach Tim Regan. The boys in blue really do fight hard in those games. And so all that work and training has been transitioning over into the games. For some reason, they just can't catch a break. I don't know what it was or what it is, but for some reason, they are just in a rut right now. They just can't catch a break. Marvin Ceballos, the new signing, he had a couple shots early on. Dane Richards had a shot that missed by inches. If Greg Janicki was able to get on the end of Marco Franco's ball into the box, I mean, it could have been 4-1 the other way at the end of the first half. So, I mean, although the scoreline reads 4-1, Ottawa, I think it was a lot closer than what people really think.
Do you think Tim Regan is the long-term manager for the 11?
I think that we'll just have to wait and see towards the end of the season. Peter Wilt said that they want to win and they want to win now. So I think if they make the playoffs, then which everybody in the league still has an opportunity to accomplish. If they make the playoffs, I think he's the man. If not, then it'll be interesting to see if he stays on as an assistant coach or comes on as signed long term to a head coach or what happens with that.
So Spencer, your Rowdies won 3-2 against the Jacksonville Armada, another Florida Derby. How did it feel to beat the Armada?
It felt good. It was really good to see how we could finally finish in the back of the net. We've been missing that this fall season, scoring goals. I really think it helped make Mike Santos look really good just because Jacksonville's keeper really played really far out of his net and thinks he's Manuel Neuer, but we've seen that he's not after that game. But besides that, I mean, it was 3-0, and then there was a penalty kick that was given to Jacksonville off a little tackle in the box from Tamika McIntyre, and then a terrible free kick where the wall just split and Camille had no chance. So, I mean, it was really good defensively and offensively, and the two goals that were given were just off of a little penalty and then off of a bad, basically free kick defensively because the wall just like split wide open. They weren't ready and Camille had no chance. So it was 3-2, and I say that we had a very good showing compared to, our loss to our first couple losses, and then we go to Carolina, we look better, and we're just looking better throughout the fall season so far.
What are your thoughts on the Coastal Cup being sponsored by Verizon?
I think the only thing about that, the only way it can help, the only thing it affects is the supporter groups, since they feel it's their cup. They started it, it's supporter groups cup. It's given by the supporter groups to the other supporter groups. I feel like maybe some of them feel like they're left out. Profit-wise, possibly if only if the teams themselves and the owners are benefiting from producing, there's a big Coastal Cup match coming up between, the Armada, the Rowdies, the Strikers, anything like that. If the teams are making money off of it, the supporters groups might say, hey, why aren't we getting anything from it possibly so that we can put some money back into, TIFOs, events they give, and then them traveling to other stadiums possibly. But I think it's a good thing. There's nothing bad that can go wrong with it.
Sponsorships equals more money, so that's all good.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so Minnesota United drew 1-1 with FC Edmonton, and Jacksonville Armada. The Armada played the Redhawks last night, Wednesday Night Soccer on One World Sports, and that was a 3-0 victory for the Armada. So this upcoming weekend, Deal, your Fury are taking on Minnesota United.
Yep, they're going for 13 unbeaten. Their 6th straight win, which I think is more impressive than the unbeaten streak. 5 straight wins, 15 points out of 5 games is not something you see very often, especially in this league. So going for 6 in a row. And, it's going to be a Saturday night game, which is rare for us in Ottawa. We play second fiddle a lot of the time to the Red Blacks CFL team. They usually play Friday nights, and we play Sunday afternoons so they can clean up the field, which we appreciated. They take the lines off. But this week, the Red Blacks are out of town, so we are front and center in Ottawa this weekend. 7 p.m. start on Saturday night. I'm hearing from the club that tickets are moving extremely well. It will be the biggest crowd of 2015. And I asked the team if it was over or under 10,000, and 2 days ago it was under, but they were very confident about that number. So that's a really good sign.
So hopefully we're going to see the other stands, hopefully.
Yeah, the north stands are open. They're selling tickets in the north stands. So that means that the south stands are pretty much full.
Yeah, no, it's just so much better when you watch the match from the stream.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I understand what they're going for with putting everybody in the south stand in terms of atmosphere. As a fan in the stands, it's better to have people around you than to have seats empty around you, laid out all over the stadium. The one thing that I would say to the team, and I could ask the question actually, is why they don't point the cameras towards the south stand instead of the other way around. I guess it has to do with logistics, but man, would it make a difference for you guys across the league watching in on the internet, or One World Sports or whatever it is, it would look a lot better, that's for sure. Because there's a lot more people in the stands than what it looks like, and the atmosphere at Fury games is actually really good.
Yeah, but when you watch it, you just think it's empty and
Yeah, absolutely.
not a good
I
atmosphere.
completely agree with you. Yeah.
So, Spencer, the Rowdies are playing another derby matchup against the Strikers, and sadly, you're not going to be on the bus.
I'll be driving my car down there or something. But yeah, we're playing the Strikers this weekend, and I think it'll be a completely different match than when we played them earlier in the fall season. The team looks better, like they've come out of their slump. Thomas Rongen said something to them or did something, because it's not the same team that started the fall season. I think that it will come down to, if it does come down to, late into the game, 80th minute, something like that, they might sub in Omar Salgado again, like he did for his debut in the Jacksonville game. And watching him live, he was a very impressive guy. He's big. He's 6'4". He's got to be probably one of the bigger strikers in the NASL, at least, because you look at him, and he's just really big and built, and he's actually pretty fast for a 6'4" guy. He was out there sprinting it sometimes. He could have had a goal, but that clearance was pretty nice from the Jacksonville game. But I think it'll come down to a close, hard-fought game, and as long as we can keep putting goals back into the back of the net, our defense will hold up, and hopefully we'll get a win.
Are you worried about the Strikers? They beat you on your home field.
I'm not worried about the Strikers. No, I think the team has really changed in the past 3 weeks. There was a point in the beginning of the fall season where you're like, okay, what happened with the spring? We finished in second, everything was good, and then we started the fall season off bad. They just couldn't find the back of the net. But with the Railhawks with the draw and then the win last week, and they're really passing better. We're seeing more switches, which throughout the whole season we didn't do. We'd only play one side of the field, and there'd be someone on the left side or the right side saying, hey, I'm over here, and they would never switch it. But last week you really saw the difference where we were flipping the field, and it really opened up holes for us to score goals.
Paul, your Silverbacks are taking on the Armada, and the Armada won 3-0 this Wednesday.
Yeah, looked pretty good doing it too. Beat up on Carolina. I'm not sure. I got to see a little bit of that game, and Carolina looked slow. Just they were a step slow. It seems like most of the match. Jacksonville was just a step faster than them on pretty much everything. My concern with us, though, I think when we're doing everything we're supposed to be doing, we're as good as anybody on any given night. I think we can beat anybody, but we're starting to get into the dog days of August. We've got all three of our back three in this 3-5-2 that we're playing. All three of them have played every single minute available in the league, and two of them are over the age of 30, and they're playing on what passes for AstroTurf at Silverbacks Park. Just played a couple of games on there. Their legs are going to be tired. They're going to be injured. We've had all sorts of conversations in the last few days about who's going to sub in and where we're going to do the subs, and I think that's got to start happening. Otherwise, I think you could see somebody like Simon Mensing, our captain, our central defender, played every minute so far. I think you could see him go down with a leg injury, and if you do that, we're screwed. We don't have somebody with match experience that could step into that place. That would really, really upset everything we've accomplished so far in the fall season. So I hope we're going to get to see Muhammad Isahaku, who we promoted from the reserves at the end of the spring season. Chris Christian was sent on loan, but he can come back on emergency loan. But it was a short loan. It was only for a month. So I think by the end of August he should be able to be eligible to come back. So I hope we're going to start seeing some more substitutions. Otherwise, I'm really afraid we're going to start breaking down injury-wise, and when we do that without much of a bench, without any planning and preparation, we're going to be in trouble.
Do you think we're gonna see more players from the reserve side going to like the first team?
I kind of doubt it. You know, that was a pretty good reserve team. They made the semifinals, and they made the semifinals, and we had taken two of their starters, starters that played most of the minutes of the reserves, got called up before the playoffs started. So we really kind of hurt our reserves team. It might have been interesting to see what they would have done against Chattanooga in the semifinal. Maybe they would have gotten to play the Cosmos B. That would have been pretty cool. But there wasn't a whole lot else left on that reserve squad. There's also that because of the way the organization is screwed up so badly, they really are separate teams. They don't train together. They don't even use the same facility except for game days. They did do one scrimmage in between the spring and fall season, which I got to go to, and there was some bad blood between the two squads. There was Hans Dennison got a pretty serious ankle injury. When I saw it, I thought he might be done for the season because he wasn't putting any weight on it, and as they were carrying him off the field, the ankle was going off at an angle that it's not designed to do. It was kind of disgusting. So there was some bad blood in between the two squads. So I'm not sure that anybody else from the reserves is coming up anytime soon.
So the next matchup is on a Sunday 4 p.m. start time. FC Edmonton taking on the Carolina Railhawks. I feel like the Railhawks have to watch out here because they lost to the Armada, and Edmonton is a strong side. And then the Cosmos are taking on the Scorpions, and the Cosmos, they almost lost to the Strikers. And they're playing at home, so they have to watch out for the Scorpions. So Pro-rel debate here, a conversation about Pro-rel. Everyone's so excited for this. Let's start out with the quote from the NPSL chairman saying that he wants to have a merger between the NPSL and the NASL. But my issue here is that the NPSL clubs say they do merge and they do implement Pro-rel. There is no backing by the owners of the NPSL financially because you don't need a lot of money to own a club in that league.
Well, okay. One of that is the biggest issue to Pro-rel in North America is the money issue. And if the rumors are to be believed, there's a group of investors in Britain that is ready to throw money at this problem and to really back NASL and PSL so that Pro-rel does come into play. This is what we're hearing out of Britain. It was very loud this week. There was 3 or 4 articles coming out of British outlets. The Telegraph was one of them, saying that these British investors were ready to go. Now, that's the main issue, and it has to be managed properly if they're going to do this. You can't say, well, okay, NPSL teams with your regional setup with very limited funds, if you win the championship, you get to NASL. You can't just throw them out there without a lifeline. You have to fund it, and you have to do it like the way in which the soccer pyramid in England used to work. Doesn't do so much now with the Premier League since '92. But what used to happen is that all the money that was brought together was pooled out into the lower echelons of the pyramid. So if you take the NASL for example here, the money that you're going to have not a single entity, but a shared pool of money to back those clubs in NPSL and NASL who need it, so that system can work. You can't just hope that it'll work. Money's involved, and it has to be a significant amount, and they have to be ready to operate at a loss for a number of years. I'll leave the floor to someone else. Sorry.
Well, my first issue is that in terms of U.S. soccer, to compete on a world level and to compete day in and day out with the Brazils, the Germanys, the English Premier League, and so we are competing, but we're competing that one-off friendly or that once every 4 years at the World Cup. We're not necessarily winning the day-to-day battles. And I think the first thing that you have to do, and the most important thing you have to do in order to get on that scale or that level, is to make youth soccer free for everyone, all children to play, and right now that's kind of an exclusive thing. So we're like the only country that necessarily has soccer is like an exclusive sport in the United States or in Canada as well. So until that happens, I think that pro relegation really needs to be on a back burner. It's in the top five maybe on that list, but pro relegation, it is number one in the mover and shaker category. There's a lot of people moving, a lot of people stirring, a lot of investors moving and shaking things up. But as Theo mentioned, to piggyback off that, most of the news of this is coming from media outlets in the United Kingdom and not here in America. You know, U.S. Soccer is not going to say anything about it. United Soccer League is not going to say anything about it, and definitely the MLS is not going to say anything about it. So, in that terms, I don't think it's going to happen. It might down the road, but there's some things the U.S. Soccer has to do before they even get there. Concerning the NPSL, the National Premier Soccer League, you know, what are you going to do with the schedule? They play from middle of May, late May, to middle to late July, and the reason why is because the player pool for NPSL teams is made up of college student athletes. So when you have college athletes playing club soccer in order to get better and prepare themselves for the college season, then what are you going to do? Is the NPSL going to say, scratch this, we're just going to bring in more players and have them actual professional players, or are we going to keep the same model and play this season, and then if they are promoted, then they go to a full season? Which brings up another point, which Theo mentioned, is how you're going to pay for it. And then the last part is, well, if these teams from the NPSL get promoted and they're still using this college model, what they term semi-pro, which they're still student athletes at the end of the day, what's that going to do for the college game here in the United States? You know, is that going to essentially kill it, because now all of a sudden you're asking kids 15, 16, 17 years old to now make a decision whether or not to go play college or to go play semi-pro / professional with NPSL. So it's an idea, yes. It's in maybe the top 5 categories of the most important things that U.S. Soccer needs to do, but it's number 1 in the mover and shakers list, but it's not the most important thing right now, and then until other things come into place, I don't see it happening.
So, Michael, just so I can answer a couple of things, you bring up a great point about the college players, but I think one of the things that we all do this when we talk about all the topics in North American soccer, is we take a snapshot of what the lay of the land is right now, and we kind of treat it like that's the permanent picture of what things will be in 10 years. Right. When actually we know, if you go back 10 years, we couldn't even dream of having this conversation, right? Right. So things are very fluid, and if, depending on how much money is being talked about being pumped into the system, the college player thing in NPSL doesn't mean that that's a permanent thing. It might mean that they're going to go pro. The teams in NPSL that are interested in this might go pro. And then to fall back on what you were saying about the college game is a unique system to the United States. And in my opinion, if the U.S. is in Canada, because the Canadians kind of piggyback off that system a lot for the players to get scholarships and such. If our nations are going to join the global community of the world soccer market in terms of players and teams, that might be a system that will die. And it might be a system that dies altogether in the next 20 years. That's another discussion altogether, because of the whole pay thing for these players. But the thing that you brought up that was really interesting is that the player who is 17, 18 years old, that decision, right now in North America, that decision kind of leans towards college, because you don't know if you're going to make it, right? And if you make it at a middle level like NASL, well, you're not going to make enough money to retire off those funds. So you want that college degree. if we fast forward 10 years and NASL is starting to pay players like MLS is now, well, then becomes more interesting to that 17-year-old to say, maybe I will go pro at 17, and he will have been in the academy system since he's the age of 10, 12, whatever. So it's a little safer for him to do that. Anyways, I don't want to monopolize the time. Go ahead, guys.
Well, let me jump in here with a couple of things. First, when you talk about the college system being in jeopardy if the NPSL develops, you talk about 16, 17-year-olds who are deciding to go pro at that level rather than going to the college. I think the analogy, especially here in America, is with college basketball. You look at the 17, 18-year-olds that are declaring for the NBA draft, and you see 8 or 10 of them a year, and they're almost always getting drafted, but everybody says, oh, that's going to kill the college game. But then you still have thousands of people playing college basketball every year. The sport is as good as it's ever been. I'm not a fan. I don't really watch much college basketball, so I can't talk specifics, but the sport's still there. The Final Four is still a big deal. They're still generating $1 billion a year from that one men's basketball tournament. So it didn't kill the sport. Yeah, okay, it may have taken away some of the talented names and put them on the bench, mostly in the NBA, but it didn't really kill the sport. So I think that might be a good analogy for if the NPSL morphs into something that is a little bit longer season where they're paying their players. And you also have to realize that in the NCAA now, student athletes get stipends. College football players get paid money. It's spending money. It's a few $100s a month. They're not going to go live off of it. But if they want to order a pizza now, they can do it. And you know that money's going to grow. They've opened that door, and it's going to get open even more, and here it comes. So, and college football is essentially the minor league system for the NFL anyway. They might as well go ahead and fund it that way. Other point I want to bring up, I had a conversation this morning with Ted Westervelt. He's on my latest episode of the podcast, and we talked about the FIFA election. A lot of the stuff that's come out recently about how U.S. soccer, when MLS was started, U.S. soccer got all these exemptions from the way the rest of the world functions. Not just the calendar, because there are quite a few countries that do the same calendar, but the transfer rules, the lack of promotion and relegation, all sorts of things that were just different from the very beginning. Now that there's going to be a new person in charge, assuming, of course, that he's actually going to step down and we're going to have a real presidential election, which I'm still not convinced that's all going to happen. I think he's going to come up with some excuse to stay. But let's assume that all that happens. What happens next? Does U.S. Soccer, if let's say Platini gets elected, does U.S. Soccer still have those exemptions, or does FIFA say, hey, you need to toe the line and start doing the things the way the rest of the world does them? You need to start working on a pyramid system of promotion and relegation, much like the rest of the world does. I think that's something that maybe U.S. Soccer is sitting back and going, wait a minute, which way is the wind blowing now? What do we got to do politically? They may not have a choice.
No, they may not have a choice, but at the same time, the MLS has so much money invested in their teams that I don't know. Money talks here in America, and I don't know how the MLS is going to deal with all that. So it'll be interesting.
And if you look at the evolution of MLS over the past 5 years, the acceleration is every year there's an acceleration, right? And we're getting closer and closer and closer to joining the world market in terms of what it looks like and the pay that's going out and the players that are coming. So I think.
Well, no, wait a minute. I would quibble on that, because if you look at the MLS salary caps, you see some really highly paid players. Like, I can't remember the guy that nutmegged Lampard the other day. Making $60,000 a year, and Lampard's making $6 million.
Yeah.
Was that his name?
Yeah, plays for Red Bull, right?
Yeah, I remember seeing that and thinking, look at the pay disparities there. But then if you look at some of the MLS salary structures, and they're not the equivalent of the top tiers anywhere else in the world, and yet these owners are paying in $100 million just to join the league. That's just to walk in the door. That's what you got to pay, and then you got to have a soccer-specific stadium, unless you're not, and then you got to follow this rule unless you're not. That's one of my other problems with MLS is they make up the rules and change them whenever they feel like it.
Do you think that with NASL talking about pro relegation and all, what you said about Platini and what's happening at FIFA, it's sort of a way to say, hey, that league is doing well, but we could do so much better. Look at us.
I think that's one of the benefits of it. Yeah, it absolutely draws attention to the league. It draws attention to the rest of the world, saying, there's soccer in this country below MLS, and some of it's not bad. So with a little bit of an investment and maybe a little bit different structure, maybe it could grow and develop and come into competition with MLS, or MLS at some point might say, you know what, we don't have a choice. We have to be involved in this. FIFA might say to U.S. Soccer, you need one pyramid, not two pyramids.
I think investment might be coming from a lot more places than just Britain in the coming years, because I think the rest of the world is looking to what's happening in the U.S. and they're seeing the New York rivalry, the Montreal and Champions League drawing 60,000. Those kinds of things draw attention, and I think other investors are going to say there's so much money to be had here, and so you might see an influx of a lot of cash coming in.
Yeah, Peterson said it in that article the other day. If there's one pyramid here, this is by far the largest soccer market in the world. This is as big as Europe.
Yeah.
Imagine combining Germany and Italy and France and Spain and England and all those. But that's what we have here. And we have the infrastructure. Why not? I would pour money into it.
And I'd like to get your thoughts on this too, guys. But I think before pro-relegation comes into a place and actually is the real thing, what do you guys think about? Because in my opinion, I would like to see the NASL have a actual require, or at least have all their teams have a reserve team and an academy before they start this pro-relegation. That way, there's a system into this. Because what I see here in Indiana is Chicago Fire is starting to send. They have been for quite some time, sending directors, coaches, and now starting clubs, having clubs merge. Got one on the north side of Indianapolis, one in southern Indiana, and then all of a sudden they become the Indiana Fire Juniors and the Indiana Fire South. So I think in a way, I think that would solidify and build a good foundation, and then go from there and try and provide a pro-relegation level.
I think of it the opposite. I think if you said pro-rel's coming, you're going to have to deal with it. You're going to have to compete with organizations that have that, so you better go get it. I think if we wait till, say, everybody's got it, that may not happen. I mean, you got situations like in Atlanta and Carolina where the league is essentially running the organization. Now, Silverbacks do have a reserves team, sort of, kind of. We also have a women's team. But we don't have an academy, and that's not going to happen until there's an owner. Same thing in Carolina. They're being run by the league essentially as well. I think if you said, all right, 5 years from today, there's going to be promotion and relegation. The 2020 season, there's going to be promotion and relegation at the end of that season. You need to be prepared. And say the same thing to the NPSL teams. Go out, find your investors, develop your organization, and the cream will rise to the top, rather than saying, okay, we need to get everybody up here before we do it. Let's say we're doing it, and the teams that are here, they're going to be promoted. Teams that aren't here, you're going down.
Yeah,
let everybody find their level.
And Mike, what you said earlier about teams paying their players to be in the academy so that it's free for players to play, I think that it happens that way. You were talking about how all these reserve teams in Indiana are coming through or are being built up. Well, it becomes a crowded competition all of a sudden for the talent that exists in that state. And I think that's how the progression of the academies is going to take place in North America. It won't be a plan to say, okay, we have to make sure that everybody plays for free. It'll be, man, if we want to get the best players, we have to tell them that we have a school here. You'll come to school. You'll have 5 hours a day of school, and then you'll have 5 hours of soccer or whatever it is, and everything will be paid for and blah blah blah, just like it happens in Europe.
I find it interesting that the MLS is trying to branch their academies out, and trying to build their own pyramid team. And then you see I think in some ways, things like the Indy 11 are kind of like a pro team, but we don't have academy, there's no reserve, so it's kind of different. But in a way, I'd like to see maybe the academy or reserve before pro relegation. But I also agree with what Paul had to say. We're going to do it this time, and you got to be ready around.
And I don't know the answer to this question, but how many MLS teams have an academy? How many MLS teams? Do all the MLS teams have a reserve team now?
All the MLS teams have a reserve team, and they're either owned or affiliated with a USL team. So that's essentially their
Right.
reserve team, like the LA Galaxy 2 or Toronto FC 2 and New York Red Bulls 2 and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
Right.
the reserve teams are all owned or affiliated with the USL. So essentially, wherever MLS goes, USL follows.
So, but again, and I hate to point this out, but in the 11, this is only your second year. You're a year and a half into it. You're comparing yourself to some teams that have been around for 20 years.
Oh, yeah.
And the Silverbacks are in that position. We haven't always been called the Silverbacks. Originally, it was the Ruckus, but it goes all the way back to 1996. So that's why there's a reserve team. That's why we own our own stadium. That's why we have a women's team. There's been those 2 decades of development that has helped that. And I would hope that an owner would come in and develop stadium and develop an academy and all that stuff. You look at what Atlanta United's doing out. They just announced their new practice facility. They're going to build a 3,500 seat stadium, and they're talking about putting a USL team there. So let's say by some miracle somebody comes in and buys the Silverbacks, there will be an MLS team, an NASL team, a USL team, and an NPSL team all here in Metro Atlanta, and 3 of them will play within about 10 miles of each other.
What a crowded market.
Yeah, well, there's 6 million people, why not?
Yeah.
John and Spencer, I'd love to get your opinions on this.
My one opinion on the school aspect, I think FC Edmonton, I think they already have that in place. That
They do. They have a very good academy.
Ottawa Fury does as well. And in fact, the structures that they've adopted in Ottawa, they restructured last year, where everything sort of funnels into coming to the Fury. So they got rid of the earlier ages. I think they got rid of everything under 16 years old. But there's a lot of little soccer clubs in Ottawa that bought into the Fury system of saying, okay, we will develop them until the age of 14 or 16, and at that point, those that are good enough can go into the Fury system.
Yeah, my thoughts on Pro-rel, Pro-rel is the only thing I think is the money situation, because with NPSL and everything, it's regional, so even if they were, to get bumped up or anything, it's the traveling, just like how the NASL hasn't really wanted to expand west yet, is because of travel and all the money it would cost. So I think all the, the expenses that come with it, teams there's gonna be owners and people that invest and say, hey, we're probably not gonna make money and have to accept that. So once you get owners and investors that accept that and will say, we want to build this and everything, then I can see it happening.
Well, I just saw, at the beginning of the season, I saw interview with Edmonton's owners, and they say they saved $700,000 on travel. So there alone, I mean, that's something that you pointed out there too. Yeah, travel is going to be a big factor. I think that they talked about, Paul talked about on his podcast, maybe having small divisions and regionalize the NPSL, and then once they're promoted, then they go and have to essentially travel across country and into Canada. So
yeah, because with traveling expenses, they're saying America could be a great place to invest for soccer and everything, and it's as big as Europe. Well, when it comes to traveling, it's as big as Europe. When you go with England, who has the Pro-rel, and Germany, and Belgium, we start naming all the countries in Europe, they're small. I mean, some of them are as big as Florida, so you're thinking about all those teams traveling in the space of Florida or something like that, or Texas. But you're talking about traveling across the whole entire country of the United States. So if you have a West Coast game, it's kind of like you have to spend all the money to fly over there, and you have to fly back if you have a week, it's all schedules and conflicts and all that. So there just has to be a lot of money that can back that up.
Yeah, and Puerto Rico starting next year will have to fly everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is definitely a concern. It's the main concern, but let's not forget that Russia also has Pro-rel, and they have the biggest country in the world, so it can be done. You just need money, and I think the money is going to start coming. I really believe that.
In one of the articles, they said a 5-year plan. Do you think that's when we're going to see Pro-rel, or earlier, later?
I would say 5 to 10 years. That's my estimate. But yeah, I think 5 years is a good.
I would say 5 years, And just a form of it, I'm not even sure. I doubt MLS would be involved in it in 5 years. I would say NASL, NPSL within 5 years, and then see how it goes. Unless FIFA, we get a new president and Platini says you will do this and you need to make it happen in 5 years, or you'll lose your sanction. I'm not really sure exactly what that means, but that seems to be something everybody's hanging on. You got to be D1 or D2 or D3. If you don't have pyramids, they're kind of arbitrary.
Yeah. I think 5 years is realistic, but start with one team. Last place team and the champion of the lower league. That's it for a while, see how it goes, and then you can build on that, but don't go all in right at the beginning with 3 bottom, 3 top, and all that movement. No, you can't do that. Not in our system.
Well, and I also think, too, 5 years, Canada might have their own league and might be completely separate from the rest of the United States. So there's also another factor that we consider, too, or whoever considers when they all this together. But I agree with one team up, one team down, or even have a late playoff, maybe even who stays up or who flip-flops.
I think the talk between the NASL and the NPSL or whatever, even wanting to do Pro-rel, it's gonna in 5 years. I mean, you think about now the MLS is thinking about it, all those owners and all those investors saying, hey, we're about to have competition possibly with that. So in 5 years, I think maybe it pushes the MLS, and the USL and whatever the heck the third league is that they have too, and like a little partnership thing. They might try to say, well, the NASL's already come out and said they want to be bigger than the MLS. They kind of want to take over the tier 1 kind of thing. So possibly, with this rivalry, one of them is going to have to win. So it can't be anything but good or bad. I think it would be good with the talk now, and I could see it in 5, 10 years. There's definitely got to be something. There's going to be a completely different landscape of what we think of soccer now in America than we would in 10 years, I think. Just like how it was 10 years from now and in the past.
If we look at the video of this in 10 years, we'll probably find ourselves pretty silly. Because it'll be completely different from what we expected.
So that's all we have for tonight. Any final thoughts?
Buy your lottery tickets so you can buy the Silverbacks.
And one final thought from me is that concerning Pro-rel, I had a little mini poll, very scientific poll on Twitter yesterday, aimed at Fury fans, but also a lot of people throughout Canada kind of climbed onto it, asking the question, if NASL goes to Pro-rel, would you go there, or would you go to an all-Canadian league? Which one would you prefer? And I was surprised. Most people preferred to stay in NASL than to go to an all-Canadian league. So take that for what it's worth. It was about 7 or 8 people in a very intense discussion for a few hours, but it was quite interesting.
What is your opinion on that? Would you want them to stay or go to the Canadian League?
Man, that's a whole show, John. We don't know. There's too many unknowns right now about a Canadian league. So for now, NASL is a great home for the Ottawa Fury, I find. Long term, I believe that Canada needs its own league. Like every other country in the world that's serious about soccer, we need our own league, and we need that for the development of our players, with our quotas and our rules. But yeah, for now, NASL is fine. Let's talk when we have some details about a Canadian league, apparently being announced in early 2016. We'll see.
Okay, that's all the time we have for today. We will be live next week around this time.
See you later, guys. It was a great talk.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Have a good night.